This is Still in the Clear, the podcast that distills the art and science of home distilling into easy-to-follow, audible nuggets for the beginning moonshiner. This information is for education and entertainment purposes only. You could even call it fiction if you want to. Home distilling may be illegal in your area. I'm your host, Cyrus, and I'm just a guy that lives in the woods and likes to make shine. So let's get into it. Hey, if any of you have specific ideas for show topics you'd like me to cover, I'd love to hear them. There are a number of ways you can contact me. You can leave me a comment at stillintheclear.com. You can email me at stillintheclear@gmail.com. Or you can drop a comment on any of our videos at our YouTube channel, Still in the Clear. Or, most effectively, you can come chat with me and the other home distillers in the Moonshine for Beginners group at MeWe.com. When I'm just hanging out online, that's where I spend most of my time, so come on and join us. I'll leave links for all of these ways to contact me in the show notes and the description, so it's easy for you to find. Now, let's get on with the show. This episode is the first in a series about the art and science of mashing. By the end of the series, you'll have a firm grasp on the many techniques used to convert starches to sugars, and by the end of this episode, you'll have the beginnings of a foundation of knowledge you'll be able to use in the rest of your distillation journey. Now that we've talked about the sugar wash, and hopefully you've made a couple of batches and found out how cool it is to make your own homemade spirit with the simplest of methods, it's time to start talking about converting the starches in grain into fermentable sugars instead of, or in addition to, just adding sugar. Grains contain starch, not sugar, and yeast can't consume starch, but the starches can be converted into sugar. So the grains contain within themselves the necessary enzymes to convert starch into sugar. Plants use starch carbohydrates to store energy for later use. In this case, the seed stores the starches in the endosperm, and the seed is mostly endosperm. It's like 95% of the seed is starch. And surrounding that portion of the seed is the aileron layer. And at the time of seed germination, the enzymes that surround the endosperm within that layer are activated and convert starch into sugars that can be used by the embryo within the seed to grow into a sprout, which uses the energy of the sugars, and then it can break through the soil and begin the process of photosynthesis. This is how the grain converts starches in the seed. But how are we going to do it? Because, the seed and grain, it's the same thing. When we talk about grains, we're just talking about seeds. Well, we can do this by introducing enzymes. This can be done naturally by using malted grain, and it can be done manually by using manufactured enzymes. And malting grains is just a process in which seeds are forced to germinate, and then the germination process is interrupted after the enzymes have been activated, but before the enzymes have been used up. And adding these malted grains to our mash gives the mash the enzymes it needs to convert the starches into sugar, allowing us to have a mash that we didn't add sugar to, or in some cases we didn't add as much sugar to. And this is the traditional way of converting starches, and this method has been used for centuries. The downside to this method is that it isn't terribly efficient when you compare it to commercially produced diastatic enzymes. So the advances in technology have created amylase enzymes which allow the distiller a much higher conversion rate than with traditional malted grain. And there's a wide range of commercially produced enzymes, too many to mention really, but we will be discussing in detail a handful of the most popularly used ones. So in the next few episodes of this series, we're going to be talking deeper about malted grains, how you can malt your own grains, commercial enzymes, both liquid and powder, and most importantly, the process for using these enzymes in your mash. So the real key to this short episode is that the mashing process is primarily for converting starch into sugar, and that conversion can be done a number of different ways that we're going to get into. Grains contain starch, and starch can't be consumed by yeast, so we've got to convert the starch to sugars. Well, that wraps up this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Share this episode with people you think might enjoy it. That would be much appreciated. It'll sure help our show grow. And don't forget, doing is improving. Have a good one. Talk to y'all next week.